Neil Weinberg. Neil, let's start with you. Boycott Russia now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the sad thing here, David, is we don't have the moral high ground after invading Iraq halfway around the world, and obviously a questionable pretext. The other problem is we don't really have a lot of economic leverage, but what else are we going to do? So we do got to hit them where it hurts. We got to keep them out of the international organizations they want to be in, like the World Trade Organization, and we got to make them feel some pain. The only real other alternative we'd have was to do nothing or to get into a military confrontation, which obviously we don't want.
So, Rich, would an economic boycott do the trick?
No, I think that would be punishing private enterprise, which is innocent of this. This is a failure of diplomacy, of government intelligence, and so on. The better long-term solution is to go all out on U.S. energy sources, drive down the price of oil internationally. That would hurt Russia while helping ourselves.
Well, Kai, I don't know if it's a failure of diplomacy or just Russia flexing its muscles, but would a boycott help?
Yes, Neil is exactly right. I mean, we cannot allow this aggression by the Russians to go unchecked. They don't respond to talk. They don't respond to American politicians saying, like, you're not playing nice in the sandbox. They view that this is like a Charlie Brown episode with the teachers, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. So, Quentin, hit them in their wallets.
Well, hit them in their wallets, but let's think about what works first. You're talking about an economic boycott about the biggest country in the world's largest oil producer. Gas pipelines going into Europe. On the supply side, they offer so much that people need on a world market, and if you're going to cut them off, they'll cut you off, you freeze in the dark. Okay, they export beets and those nested dolls, we could stop buying those, big deal. On the import side, they got 20 cities with populations over 1 million that buy luxury goods. People will sell into that. So let's think about what works. Let's offer visas and citizenship to their best and their brightest and undermine them that way. Let's go slow on their diplomatic visas. Let's not offer them access to financial products that would help them out. There are other things we can do aside from a trade boycott.
Do the other stuff, but don't shoot ourselves in the foot by an economic boycott.
Exactly. We shouldn't jump to the gun to economic sanctions, especially when we haven't exhausted all our diplomatic options. Now, beyond that...
Do they really respond to diplomacy?
I don't think we've really tried yet, first of all. But beyond that, Russia is a huge producer of oil and natural gas. They're one of the biggest suppliers in the world. So obviously, if we're going to levy all these economic sanctions, we should be ready that they may bite back and they could tighten the world supply, and you could see oil go to unprecedented levels.
Mike, could they do that?
I don't think so. I like a lot of what Rich said. I think he's really hit the nail on the head. You know, I think Russia is basically a lamb in wolf's clothing right now. Their economy, with the exception of oil and gas, is nothing. It's like a third world country. I'd like to humiliate Putin. I'd like to kick him out of the G8, which wouldn't hurt anybody outside of Russia economically, but would show the world that Putin is really...
By the way, we're saying Putin. Of course, he's not the president. He's supposedly doesn't have the power anymore, right?
Well, Ozanian, you say it couldn't happen, but in 2005, they cut off the pipelines to Ukraine, and that caused turmoil in the EU.
That's true. That's true. Rich, he can cause a lot of problems in Europe. It may not hurt us as much, but it might hurt Europe, right?
Yeah, and that's why they're being big chickens on this. But there's one other element to the good ideas that Quentin had and Mike Ozanian had, and that is just the strength in the U.S. dollar, because that would be another element that would bring down these commodity prices. It would not only hurt Russia, it would hurt Iran, it would hurt Venezuela, it would hurt all of these world pests at the moment.
Kai, one of the problems with these boycotts, though, is do they work? I mean, we've had a boycott against Cuba for, what, almost 50 years, and Fidel's still in power.
They've worked against South Africa. I mean, the business people in South Africa were quite instrumental in getting reforms passed there. And to go back to Mike's comment about the G8, that's a one-time thing. I mean, it'll be more humiliating for us to have to invite them back in. We don't want to be doing that.
But, Quentin, do you doubt that they worked against South Africa?
I covered the oil business for 4 years. There was an embargo on imports of oil to South Africa the whole time. They never had a shortage. They did fine. People do sell. The oil business is one of the worst places to try and attack people. Totally fungible, travels everywhere. Russia would be able to sell anywhere they wanted at a premium price.
Neil?
You know, boycotts do cause pain. And the other thing is, to Russia, a lot of this is about pride. And if we kick them out of some of these international organizations, that hurts them. The other thing is, you know, the things you're talking about, Rich, you know, the things down the road, we can develop our own oil and so on. We're talking about years. We need a solution now. We need to make them feel pain now. This is about real politics. This is about global politics. This is about us exerting our interests.
Go ahead, Rich.
Well, look at how oil has come down in the last month just by all of these new rhetoric to, more aggressive drilling and new rhetoric defending the U.S. dollar. That's had an immediate impact. Neil.
Quentin, you talk about doing things other than economic embargoes, slowing up their passage if they want to come here and doing diplomatic maneuvers. But do they really care? Do you think Putin cares at all about how he's viewed diplomatically over the world?
Oh, no, he doesn't care about how he's viewed diplomatically. He does care about where the money's coming from. And Rich makes a good point about oil.
So then why not the economic boycott?
Because it won't work. They'll just, typically the elites enrich themselves off the black market prices, and the ordinary people get hurt. You want to hurt them in a big way, get U.S. demand down, lower oil prices.
A boycott would hurt Russia, but would also hurt a lot of countries that we don't wish to hurt because oil is sold on a world market. That's the key thing. And look, Russia is not going to indefinitely stop selling oil and natural gas because that's its lifeblood. That's how it feeds its country.
And so you're undercutting your own argument. I mean, if in fact they have to sell that oil in order to make their money, then maybe an economic embargo would hurt.
You know, David, it wouldn't be such a bad thing necessarily if Europe did feel a little bit of pain, because Europe, there's such a bunch of namby-pambies, they don't back us up on anything.
That's true. Yeah, they're exactly the ones that are supporting Russia right now, Germany and France. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Yeah, but to Zanin's point, you know, everyone is going to be feeling that pain. If Europe is in pain, that means that the global supply has been squeezed, and of course it's going to go up here.
On the other hand, it's a good time for it because demand is going down.
But also, it doesn't necessarily need to be sanctions against oil. There are lots of other things that we can do. We have 12 different sanctions programs now. They're all different. We can impose sanctions on financial transactions with the government officials. I mean, there's tons of different types of sanctions. But
then where does it stop? If we continue to escalate it through economic sanctions, and then what's next? You know, we already have war theaters in Afghanistan, Iraq. Do we really want the third Cold War?
We got to leave that question open. From Evelyn, coming up next, growing controversy over a new report claiming more than half of American companies don't pay taxes.